Hello and welcome to Art for Everybody. My name is Effi Steiner-Böhm. I'm an artist from Germany, and these two little figures here are Pedro and Rosa, and they sometimes help me in my videos to explain things, or sometimes they even correct me. If you are looking for a new hobby right now and would like to try out painting, then I would strongly recommend that you start with acrylics. They are the easiest medium because they forgive almost every mistake. And in this video, I'm going to show you the basics about the material you need, a little color theory, and at the end, we are going to paint a small still life together. So let's get started. Okay, let's have a look at our material first. What you have to know about acrylic paints is that they are made, as all other mediums as well, of pigments. And they look like this in this little jar here. And of a binding agent, which is made of water and small synthetic particles. And if the water dries, these particles form an elastic film, and this film is no longer water soluble. And it means that after your paint is dry, you can paint over it again and again. And this is why acrylics forgive every mistake. The other thing you have to know about the pigments is that some pigments are transparent, some of them are opaque, and some of them are in between. And of course, when you later learn more about painting, this is important to know, because sometimes, you want a really thick red paint and you take the wrong pigment, and then you are disappointed because your result is just transparent. So this is why you have to know about the pigments. And the companies show you whether their pigments are transparent or opaque in these little boxes on their tubes. Can you see that? This box is half full, which means it's in between transparent and opaque. And this one, for example, this is titanium white, is a very opaque pigment. Okay, also, if you want to paint along today, it's sufficient if you have 4 colors. You need the 4 basic colors, which are red, yellow, and blue. And I recommend as pigments, or as hues, as they are also called, a cadmium red, a cadmium yellow, an ultramarine blue, and a titanium white. So that was about the colors. The other things you need are bristle brushes. I personally prefer filberts. They have a sort of rounded tip, but you can also take any other bristle brush. If you have the money, I would advise that you invest in good brushes, because that's really worth it, because they really keep a long time. I have a number 4, which is about half a centimeter wide, and a number 1. And what I would also recommend is a small round brush, a synthetic brush, for the small details. This is all you need for the beginning. As a painting surface, you can use any thick paper. I have fairly thick carton here, but you can also use drawing paper, which is thick enough so that it doesn't get soggy. And as a palette, I use quite normal paper plates, and you can, paint over them again and again, so this will keep for quite a while. Or you can use a porcelain plate if you want to. And then, of course, you will need kitchen towel and a pencil for sketching. Now, to try out the colors, I would like to do a color wheel with you. And it's very simple. Draw a circle. And if you can't do it properly, as I can't, just take a plate and trace your circle. And then make 2 halves It doesn't have to be perfect, just approximately. Then do quarters. And then divide each quarter into 2/3. Again, approximately, it doesn't have to be perfect. When mixing acrylics, the best way to go about it is to mix from light to dark, because you will see that in a minute, darker colors make the lighter colors dark very, very fast. And this is why we start with the light color first. And I want you now to fill with the yellow, to fill the first field on your color wheel. And just feel how the color works on the surface. It's sort of creamy, maybe like toothpaste. And it doesn't matter if you see the brush strokes. This is all about getting to know your medium and what it can do and what it can't. Okay, and now we want 3 different hues of orange in the next 3 fields. And we go about it like this. We take our yellow, put it in the middle of the palette, take the tiniest bit of red. I'd like to show you, just very, very little bit of red, and mix the lighter color with it. And you can see it gets orange very quickly. And this is why you have to be very careful with the darker colors. And then we fill in the next field on our color wheel. And this should be a dark yellow or very light orange, whatever you want to call it. And maybe you can see here that the colors aren't opaque because they don't cover the surface completely. And then we go on mixing. Take a little more red and just get a feel of how you do it. And now even more red until we get a very dark orange, maybe like a blood orange. And don't worry if it's not perfect. It doesn't have to be. For the next field, we want a pure red. That means we have to clean our brush really well. And if you clean your brush, please do not cramp it on the bottom of your jar, but just wipe it gently so that the hairs of the brush don't break. And then wipe the brush like this, because if you have expensive brushes, it's really worth taking care of them. And the next field, as I said, is red. And then we do the same thing again with the blue, okay? We take the red, take the tiniest bit of blue, and fill in the next field. And more blue. And don't worry if you don't get the right color on your first attempt. That happens to everybody. There's no shame in it. And more blue. And I would like to show you something that happens to beginners very often, and that is that the brush looks like this. There is too much paint in it. And then if you want to paint fine lines, you can't because your brush is too full of paint. So what you do in this case, you have to wipe the brush and wipe the paint off it. You don't have to wash it, but you have to you have to wipe off the paint. And then if you want to make a fine line, this should be okay. So again, we have to clean our brush really well and fill the next field with the blue. And in the next field, you're going to see what happens if you want to get a dark color lighter, with a lighter color. Because what happens is that you need tons of paint to do that. Can you see that? There's almost no effect if I put in a lot of yellow. It's still very, very, very dark. And this is why if you want a lighter color, you do the following. You take your brush with the dark color, go to a different spot on your palette and add the light color, and then it should work. Because if you put the light color in here, there is still too much blue in there to get it light, and you will have a dark green again. And now we want a very light green, and we have to wipe the color off our brush so that there isn't much blue left in it. And if I take the yellow now and go to another spot yet again, there is still enough blue in my brush to get a very light green. And all these things you can practice with color wheels. That's why I find them so important and so useful. Also, if you use other hues of the basic colors, always do color wheels, because then you can be sure that the colors you use in your color wheel are harmonious. You know, they go well together if you use them in a painting. Okay, now I would like to show you some color theory on the color wheel. And the first color theory is that you have the warm side of the colors with all the yellow and reds in it, and you have the cold side of the colors with all the blues in it. And as a rule for beginners, it's always good to say use warmer colors for the light side of your motif and use cooler colors for the dark side of your motif. There are more rules to that, but this is, for beginners, this is a very, very basic rule which I would like you to remember. Then what you can easily read is that the three basic colors stand out of the color wheel. And it means that the greatest contrast is always between the three basic colors. As soon as you mix them, they get broken. They are not quite as bright as your basic colors. And if we mix in a third color now, if we mix all three colors together, for example, the color gets even more broken. Oh, let's put it over here. Or if you add white, for example, you get a really broken color, which is very subdued. So the other thing you can use in paintings is, if you have a motif and you want it to stand out of the painting, use very pure colors with your motif and use very broken colors in the background. Now you can do all kinds of mixtures with the three basic colors and white, or you might want to try out the basic colors just with white. That's also a nice color. Just get to know how your medium works. So I hope you have gotten familiar with acrylics now, because now we are going to do our small still life together. In the last part of this video, we are going to paint this apple. I will briefly show you the most important thing about drawing an apple. It is simply just a sphere, and the stalk grows out of the sphere at the top, and the slug is at the bottom. So it doesn't matter whether you draw it like this or like that, the principle will always be the same. Now, if you follow my pencil, you will see that you have an indentation here, which looks like a wave. And this wave is just below the top. Can you see that? In other words, when I draw my apple, it's nothing more than a circle, and it can be a little dented at the top and at the bottom. And just below the edge, you have this little wave. And out of here grows either the stalk, or you could have the slug. There's nothing to it really. What is also important about the apple and about all round fruit actually are the lines. You always find them in fruit, like if you think of a pumpkin, they are always the same. They go from the stalk down to the bottom. And if you follow my pencil now, you will see that this line is straight. This one bends a little, this bends even more, and this vanishes in the edge. And we have the same thing to the other side. And the same thing, of course, happens in the wave. If you follow my pencil now, you see that this line is straight, this bends a little, even more, and this vanishes in the edge. And if you mark your drawing with these lines and follow these lines while painting, almost nothing can go wrong. Okay, can you see that? With a pumpkin, it would look the same. You know, with onions, it looks the same with all round fruit. So I put my apple away now, and you will see the photograph, and I make my drawing. So I have this sphere, which is a little dented, and it's a little dented down here. It's fairly round on this side. And I have my wave here, and I mark the lines which bend towards the edge and into the wave as well. And then of course I have the slug. Could be longer, doesn't matter. Then I have a shadow under the apple, which is very dark. And I have the cast shadow on the table in this area. And if I watch my apple closely now, I can see a light here, and I can see a lighter part here. And in here it's darker, and on this side it's darker as well. That's all I have to know. So I'm going to paint the light side first, because as we've just learned, the dark colors make the lighter colors go dirty really quick. So we mix from light to dark. So I take my yellow, add the tiniest amount of blue. Oops. That was almost too much. And I mix a very light green. If you see the apple more in the orange range of colors, that's perfectly fine as well. I do it as a very light green apple now. And now I simply fill the whole form with this light green. And I follow the lines that I've marked before. Okay, and now I want this side darker than the other side, and I just add a little bit of blue. And if you want, you can add red. Very, very, very tiny bit amount of paint. And I darken this side of my apple. And always following the lines. And in the wave, again, I follow the lines. Now I want to get lighter, even lighter on the light side. So I add a little white, but be careful with white because white makes the color go cold. So add a very, very tiny bit of the red. And you just blend the light and dark color together here in the middle. And the same up here. And just the other way around. Again, very, very little dark color and blend in the dark color into the light color. Okay, now we want the cast shadow on the table, and since this is a white table, we want some grayish color for the shadow. And again, we mix our shadow with the three basic colors and get a very dark color now for the bit under the apple. And if we add white now, it becomes some sort of gray. And even more white. And as we learned when we were drawing, the shadow just vanishes into the white of the table. And for the background, you can mix all kinds of different whites. You can vary that into a more reddish or more bluish color. It doesn't have to be the same color everywhere, because that makes the painting interesting if you have various hues of white. And behind the apple, you might see that on the photograph, the background is a little lighter. Whereas on that side, it gets a little darker. And even if you don't see that the background is darker here, this is a trick the old masters used to make the contrast between the light side and the background bigger, so that the apple stands out of the painting. And you might see that as soon as I make horizontal brush strokes now beneath the apple, this seems like a flat surface. If you have finished your background and the surface on which the apple stands, you can do the fine details, which is you can correct the edge of the apple, paint over it again. And then all you need to do is to paint in the stalk. And for that we mix this very dark color with blue, red and yellow. And we also want to reinforce the wave, and for that we need a hue which is a little darker than the dark green of the apple on this side. And we can also imitate some of the lines on the apple. Just be very careful that you don't get too dark at this point. Now the last thing we need are the very light spots on the apple, and we mix a very, very light yellow for that. Don't use white, that's too much. Just a very light yellow mixed with white. And the same color for the stalk. So let me just reinforce the shadow under the apple once again, that it gets clearer, and maybe take back the light on the stalk again. And there, our first still life is finished. I hope you like yours, and I surely hope to see you again in the next lesson when we are going to paint a still life with 3 or more spherical objects together. And until then, have a good time. See you soon.